Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life.
Hi, everyone. I hope this finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey, and I am absolutely delighted to have this opportunity to interview intuitive animal communicator, compassionate medium, author, and healer, Tami Hendrix, who is committed to helping relationships transform on every level. Tami had unique experiences during her childhood that helped her to forge a deep, compassionate connection with all beings and brought her the remarkable ability to perceive the true essence of any soul or situation. This soul-level awareness enables her to communicate with animals emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, allowing her to tune in and see the soul path of an animal and how it intertwines with her client. Because Tami now maintains a private animal sanctuary, she has had firsthand experience with many different animals and situations. The mediumship development classes she took over many years with the renowned medium James Van Praagh solidified her passion to help pets who have crossed over to connect with their humans in a beautifully healing way. And she has also completed extensive coursework and in-person training in the fields of intuition, writing and channeling, psychic and mediumship development, and healing from grief, with other well-known authors and practitioners, including psychic mediums Sue Frederick and Thomas John, who I've had the true pleasure of interviewing on this podcast. Through her intuitive process called SoulSpeak, Tami helps individuals through life transitions, personal crises, and the grieving process following the loss of a loved one. The process is uniquely organic and conversational in nature, and by holding the energetic space to receive spiritual messages that foster her clients' healing and transformation, Tami inspires her clients to embrace new perspectives about their life situations and connect with their own heart wisdom. I'm looking forward to talking with Tami, who'll be speaking to us today from North Carolina about the unique experiences in her childhood that forged a deep, compassionate connection with all beings, the ways trauma and grief can catapult us into connection with our higher selves and result in soul transformation. Her new ebook titled Soulful Journeys, Finding Healing and Connection Through Animals, the important part animals play in our personal and spiritual journeys, the healing way Tami helps pets who have crossed over to connect with their humans, and much, much more for what is surely going to be an open-hearted, fascinating, and very illuminating interview with a lovely, lovely person. Hey, Tami, from my heart, a warm welcome to Grief and Rebirth podcast.
Oh my goodness, thank you. That was wonderful. And, as I listened to you, I was thinking, there was a trajectory and a whole journey that I went through without realizing as a child I was being, trained, and I was learning, and the animals were, training me. It took a village.
That's it with all of us, right? Even like I'm listening to you with your path to where you are, and here you are looking at me, and I have had a similar, my own path that brought me, I think, the empathy and the compassion to be able to talk to everyone with the purpose of helping people to heal and stop their suffering. So with that in mind, and with you, it's about humans and animals, which is really fascinating and wonderful. Let's have everyone sort of get to know you and how you came to be the Tami you are today. So could you describe for us the unique, pivotal experiences in your childhood that helped you to forge such a deep, compassionate connection with all beings, and tell us especially about Ginger, that sweet motherly collie mix who saved you when you were only 4 years old?
Oh, well, all of us probably come from colorful backgrounds with lots of characters and lots of different scenarios. And my particular journey, I dropped into a family that had a lot of dysfunctional issues, a lot of alcoholism, a lot of arguments, just a lot of static that was imbalanced. And so as a child, I would literally go outside to get away from the energy, which was so heavy in the house. And it's also where I learned my intuition, because I would be concerned what was happening. I apparently learned how to track what was going on in one side of the house, and I'd be on the other. So that even in itself was a teaching, for the intuition and the awareness. But I would go outside and it felt open and free, and I could breathe. And all the animals were out there, all the backyard critters, and all the dogs and cats in the neighborhood. And it was like breathing my way home when I went outside. And the animals would come and I would just hang out with them. And, there were no words. I could just feel them. And over time, as I learned, they showed me how humans cloak their emotions. They hide behind a smile. Fine, I'm fine. But underneath, they may be suffering quite a bit. And so I learned to look underneath things. Look not at, but within. And so the animals would say, this person's hurting.
And you were able to hear them. You were able to
yes,
hear
it was a translation of energy. Yes, I was able to translate the energy that they were sending. Animals read energy, so that's how they communicate. Maybe I'd get it in a flash of a picture. Maybe I would get it in a word, or more likely a feeling. I would be able to identify those feelings. So it's super empathetic. And as I grew and saw the suffering that my own family went through, I mean, just the violence, and the fear I had, for all the members of the family. I had one instance when I was 4 that was fairly pivotal. And I remember looking to my left and looking to my right, and I'm thinking, I'm 4 years old, people. Like, I'm the adult in the room. So it was an awareness that dropped in very clearly.
You were
that I was
conscious so quickly.
Yes,
so
I was the only really awake one. And so I was aware of the whole all the time. And so it was during that time, I think there had been some big blow up in the house that they decided that we were going to get a dog. I was thrilled. And so we picked this puppy, and a little collie mix, and we named her Ginger. And at first, my father wouldn't let her sleep in the house. And then for some reason, he decided that was okay. And she became my constant companion, very motherly. We would go out for walks in the neighborhood, and she had this sense of knowing people, and it was like we'd go greeting everybody, and she would stop at a particular house, and I would follow her, and she would go, and there'd be somebody sitting on the porch, and maybe they were the only, maybe they were lonely or whatever. So I would sit with them in the afternoon. Ginger and I would just hang out. This little kid hanging out with this person. And then when she was done, she would get up and we'd say our goodbyes. But we did that over, and she would pick the houses that the people needed attention or needed.
It's like a healing dog.
Yes, absolutely.
It's like I've been to a stable where they had healing horses, right? And you had a healing dog. There are animals that have that ability, right?
Absolutely.
All animals have that ability, or certain ones are more
some degree. All animals, all the collective, they're here to help heal humans, in addition to their own soul path, which we can talk about later. Ginger gave me a sense of security. She was stable. I could count on her, unlike the craziness of trying to manage what was going on, trying to avert a disaster, trying to protect my mother, like whatever the crisis du jour was. It really gave me a sense of being grounded in myself, not only outside, but just grounded. So important.
Wow, how lucky you were, and how lucky Ginger was. You saved Ginger also.
Oh, she was just absolutely my first and best teacher. And from then, a lot of kids in their neighborhoods, they'd go out and say, well, knock on the door, can so-and-so come out and play? For me, the animals would come to the house and they'd be like, hey, Tammy available? Can she come out to play? So which made total sense to me. I mean, I would ride my bike around and around and I'd be like, hey, Casey, hey, like I'd know everybody without realizing that I was a part of a community that perhaps the adults weren't even aware of, right? I was aware of the natural world, which is where, all the basis of communication lives is in that place of that natural space and through our hearts. And of course, animals are all about the heart, right?
Right,
So
right, right.
and we feel undefended with animals. We don't feel like we have to cloak our feelings. Most people will become undefended, even the most gruff. If they come across a baby or an animal or a puppy, and it's just like it triggers that heart opening and, kind of goes around the bush. If they had said, I'm not going to open my heart, but they do anyway because they can't help it.
Now, what do you say about kids, though, who seem to be so afraid of animals? Like, no one seems to have taught them that, but I saw a little boy once and someone had a puppy and he was afraid of the puppy. Would you say that's a past life trauma or something? Or
It could be, but also I think it could be some things he's heard from the parents. Who knows? It could also be a highly sensitive individual that fast movement is just a little bit too overwhelming. And so it gets translated energetically of that's not safe.
oh,
So it could be that, it's just too rapid a movement and it's not explained. We can look at it and say, oh, it's the puppy that's causing that. When in reality, it's like there's a balancing of energy that's not there, and perhaps it
so
will be
maybe if
like,
someone had brought that little puppy gently
yeah, yeah,
to,
and just slowed it down and brought it to the place where it's grounded, so that I don't even just you describing that little boy makes me feel like there was this like jitteriness, like within him that kind of took over everything else, where his body had a reaction. Animals
Mhm.
do that too, and feral animals have that kind of too much energy coming at me. So yeah.
Oh, wow, that's so interesting. Thank you for that. That explains
Mhm.
something to me. Thank you. And so now you're going through all this. You're this little adorable little kid. You're 4 years old, and you're hanging out with Ginger. But when did all of this catapult you into this connection with your soul purpose? That this was your soul path. That did this happen later on, or did it help you at a very early age to hone in because this was transforming you?
Yes. I guess I didn't realize at the time I was being taught, right? Life teaches us, direct experience teaches us. So throughout all the different animals, as I grew older and then I got married, each one had its own teaching for me, or gift. I always like to say everybody shares gifts. It was the profound losses I experienced in my own life, with my father passing from suicide and my mother several years later after being estranged from me, and then my sister not too long. She gave it a little break before that happened. And I remember at the time when she passed, she was an alcoholic as well and had followed that family pattern and ran into a telephone pole. And I remember, as if I needed the memo, but this is I was like, have I not had enough loss? Like, you couldn't have given me the memo ahead of time. Like, this had to be a sudden loss. So I go into arguing on how it happened as if they owe me something. But, ultimately what I found was I was literally grieving three people at once,
For sure.
because had you asked me after I got out of college and I moved on, I got married, started having children, had you have asked me, hey, Tammy, how are you doing with that? Like, your mom, your dad passed, that the way he passed, your mom passed, you didn't get to heal that, how are you doing? I'd be like, I'm great. I got my kids. I got, we are doing businesses. But here's what happened is, when my sister had that happen, it literally stopped me to a place where all of these unknowns to me, I thought I had gone as far as I could with my own emotions. All this grieving piece came up. And so I literally, for the longest time after Leo passed, I would sit, had a dog named Snoopy, and she was very Mary Poppins like. She was motherly to everybody. So apparently I've needed a lot of mothers. But I would sit with her and turn on this music, and she was in, and the music would just get me crying. I'd cry and cry. And so this went on. I hug her neck and we'd both just sit there. Well, this went on for months until one day it dawned on me that, like, I'm pretty sure the music is triggering, like, me to keep in this space that I wasn't getting out of. And as so I stopped playing
It's
that. And
amazing that you were so conscious that you were able to process that.
I was like, wait a minute. Every
You
time
know?
I like,
I mean, not everybody's going to say something's up with this.
I felt drawn to do it, but at the same time, there was a dawning on me that this was becoming normal. This feeling I was normalizing to. This was just the new Tammy now, the one who had gone through all kinds of abuse and just the new Tammy. And so, it was deep, deep, deep dark night of the soul period where I really the animals were the ones to comfort me, to listen to me, to help me go through my own process. I remember we have a couple of day play barns and close to the house, and I was coming from one of them into the house, and I stopped because I had the thought, wait a minute, how can you be a sister one day and all of a sudden the next day you aren't? How real is that word sister, right? What is really true? That's just a label, right? It has energy, but it's something we identify with, but it went away. And the next day I wasn't. I woke up and the whole world had changed again. So it really started a deep self-inquiry, deep questioning, like, well, wait a minute, is it all about going to work, getting things done, doing the kids, coming, like, there's got to be more that we're being taught, that we're opening to. And so I think the animals, one of their greatest gifts for all of us is they help us keep our hearts open so that we don't block them, defend them. They keep helping us open them just a little bit, even if we're grieving, we can hug an animal and feel relief in that.
What do you say about probably really hurts you, excuse me, for people who are cruel to animals, people who hit animals, beat
Yes.
animals, starve animals?
Yes.
What in the world is that about?
That's a obviously deep lack of compassion, but mainly with themselves that's outcropping, projecting on to something else. I used to watch my father, beat my mother. I used to watch him kick animals. And, that what it taught me about underneath the behavior is there is not that it excuses it, that there is a true hurting, suffering individual there that doesn't know and fairly unconscious, right? So that they're not empathetic to how they're affecting another being. It's interesting because the animals, when they go through any kind of abuse like that, and we say rescue one that has been terribly abused, the animals all have stories to tell just like we do. This is what happened in my childhood. This is what I went through. The animals tell their stories too. But here's the thing, once they're done telling their story, they're good. They don't need to hang on to it like we do. And so the animals will actually be grateful to help share the information. And then they step into, well, who am I now? What's my potential? Like, can we grow forward? And I think that's the how they heal from that. If we keep telling the story over and over again for them, like, oh my God, he was burned, he was abused, blah, blah, then it holds them spiritually in that story as well. So it's that whole story piece is so fascinating for the healing part.
They're wonderful teachers that way.
Yes.
And how they were able to let go and in a way
Yes.
forgive heinous things that people can do to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I'll tell a real quick story of Ollie, who just passed, I might add, but Ollie came to me in 2006, completely feral. It was a completely amazing rescue of him that was so like,
It was a dog.
yeah, little Jack Russell, but I felt intuitively I was supposed to help him. And in the end, we caught him on Christmas Eve in a cat trap of all things in a drainage ditch. And then I remember getting him and going, oh my gosh, after 2 days on the lam after I'm worn out. It's Christmas Eve, but he shook. I kept him inside because he was such a flight risk and really scared. And he would shake violently, like violently. I would come into the room and he just all over shaking. Now, if you think about it, most of us, if we see a child shaking, if we see somebody, we're wanting to go comfort and hold the shaking. Well, see, I didn't have that option with him. I couldn't touch him. He wasn't going to have any human handle him. So what I did is I sat with him for hours, several times a day. I would just sit. Sometimes I'd play music. Sometimes I'd just sit. I'd be very present with him, and he shook. He shook and nothing changed. About 3 weeks into it, one day he looked at me and he realized that he could shake and the world was okay. that nothing horrible was going to happen if that shaking stopped or if that shaking continued. So I didn't try to take the shaking. I let him experience those feelings and experience it, and then he could move through that piece himself. So I didn't try to like, come here, I'm going to make you feel better. So I think that's part of the healing, is when we're in spaces of grieving, to be where we are and be what our body is going through, and hold the space for it.
So you let him process. And then
Yes.
what happened when he made that realization? Did he eventually approach you, or how did that?
So when that happened, it was a light bulb. He's like, wait a minute, I'm shaking and nothing's happening. Like everything's fine. Then I could start like getting him to come to me. I'd put treats on my shoulder and he'd come grab them or I'd put them in my pocket. So then started a really lovely relationship. And then during that time, as spirit has had it in my life, I've never sought out animals. They found me. We had a little, semi-feral one named Zoe come, a little Jack Russell, and she actually helped me with him because she was semi-feral herself. She would allow some touching, but she had been on the run too, so she understood him and he understood her. So I'd bring old Zoe down with me and I'd be like, can you help me? And he responded and he came out of it. He loved other animals, and throughout his life he never quite got to where you could just scoop him up and say, I love you, Ollie. But he'd come around and I'd stick my arm out and I'd turn my head looking the other way, and he'd let me pet him and rub him. But if I turned, that energy was, like the little boy and the scared with a puppy, the energy that was too direct for him. But I could look the other way and pretend it wasn't happening and he'd let me do it.
It sounds like he had tremendous anxiety. Something
Yeah.
had happened to him and he was very
Yeah.
vigilant and very
Yeah.
afraid.
Well, and it anchored in his body, but truly, he lived to be 18, and he
Wow.
just passed September 12th. And actually, in the most beautiful, he came to me in a dream before he passed, while he was doing well, and I was like, oh, I don't know about this. But in the dream, I was holding him and loving him while he passed. And that is exactly what happened. I was able
Wow.
to do that. What a remarkable beginning, middle, the life story, and what his free spirit and his beautiful, sweet spirit. And at the end, this beautiful passing that, it's poignant beauty.
Wow, Tammy, what a beautiful story. Wow. You talk about the fact that people form connections with animals that create intricate patterns of shared experiences called heart shape. Could you explain that concept to us?
I'd be happy to. Katie, one of my best friends, actually taught me about heart shapes. She says that humans go through many different stages in their hearts in life, and that they all have different shapes. And I know at times mine has looked kind of fragile, at a fragile heart shape, right? If we term them like emotional heart shapes, we can have grieving, we can have heart shapes, weighted heart shapes, we can have echoing heart shapes, meaning the deafening silence after an animal or a loved one has passed and you come back into that space. It's an echo, of how you feel. Those actually morph and change. There's a joyful heart when you know, when we a smiling heart when we learn to smile again. When Ollie was starting to get better, I had been worried, heavy, without realizing I was, because I'd had several pass before, and I was like, "Oh, you guys got to stop this like little like domino thing going on. I don't to slow it down." And when he started getting better, my heart smiled. I felt it. So you can feel what shape your heart is, and it fluctuates and transforms and changes and moves all throughout our lives. We have so many different ones. Recently somebody said, well, I have a guarded heart. That's a heart shape. And I said, well, is it guarded now? And they were like, no, not guarded now. So it's, we can get in patterns of saying, I have a grieving heart and that's who I am. That's who I was before Katie came into my life and fished me out of the hole. But those heart shapes are good for us to recognize, oh, this is self-awareness. This is the space I'm in. And the animals are very aware and empathetic to that heart shape. And they will often, especially the healers amongst us, which about all of us are, they will often do something to help change that heart shape. help it morph into something a little light or do something funny. I have a little dog that steals money and she thinks it's hysterical to run under the sofa with it. And then when I grab it, it rips in half. I'm like,
oh no.
They're always working with our hearts. It's always. And so that, the heart shapes are just fascinating because there's so many different ones.
So let me ask you about this. Speaking of these heart shapes and all, is a pet has a soul path too?
Yes.
Is that soul path about its own evolution? Is it about helping us to evolve, though there are pets that are not, like if they're feral, they're not necessarily connected to us? Or is it a little of both? What is that all about?
This is such a fascinating topic. And again, I've learned it through the animals over the years I've experienced them. So there is a collective that each animal group belongs to. Horses, the whales who are the keepers of the earth's history, dolphins, the dogs, the yellow jackets. There's the collective of each group. And there's usually, well, not usually, there's always a kind of a lead of each group, a head when you go to. However, each being has its own individual path, and each being has its own individual free will and soul path. So, in other words, if I use my own experiences, I've watched as the animals have come, like for instance, Ollie, part of his soul path was learning to trust, just like we learn to trust sometimes. We're working on that in our own lives. I've seen animals go through spiritual awakenings. I had one go through a completely spiritual awakening, changed him forever, but I watched it happen. I didn't
Could
make
you
it
tell us a
happen.
little bit about that? That's fascinating.
Yeah, it was a black lab named Alex, and he was one of the first ones that had come to me, which apparently was going to be a string of animals over the years, so much so that I thought something was wrong with me and I had a neon sign. So at any rate, with Alex,
They
he
read your
came
energy, Tammy. They read your energy. It
apparently.
said loving and safe and wonderful. Here I come. There you go.
Apparently, I mean, I would have a dream and then a week later they would show up. So there was a while there I'd have a dream and then I'd go outside and like duck. I was like, oh my gosh, where are they going to come from? But Alex, he came from apparently a very dark, abused background. He was an adult. I would say Alex was pretty street smart, but he was extraordinarily intelligent and kind. And when my son and I were doing some shelter work, and we walked him out, and we were doing photos for their website, and took some great photos. He had the most gorgeous eyes, and so we put him back in his run, and he went to the back of it real quick. But as I left, I turned around and looked, and he literally nodded his head. Thank you. That was right before Thanksgiving, and it worked. And right as I was leaving, one of the workers there said, "That's a bad one. You don't want him. He's a bad one. He's mean." So it worked on me, and I couldn't get those eyes out of my head. And so my son and I went back right before Thanksgiving and brought Alex home. And Alex would turn out to have quite a bit of baggage. He turned out to be incredibly, incredibly intelligent, very, very aware of his surroundings, but he had space issues, meaning don't crowd him, which, think about it, a lot of us, like, our space is important, our heart space, our physical space. So Alex would get triggered by another animal, and it could be over a squirrel, it could be over a frisbee, it could be like you name it. There were triggers for him. Something would cross his eyes to where he wasn't in his body. There was like another energy that would come in and would take over him. So there was a lot of upheaval, a lot of fights that went on. That was just, this didn't happen on my watch, so I couldn't figure out, what was going on. And so I worked with Alex as diligently as I possibly could. And, one day, many years into his, and in the meantime, he learned about friendship with a dog named Mikey, another street smart lab. You would never put the two together. During that time, he really grew. And the time I saw him wake up is one of the animals had brought like a squirrel or something down that they had found. And I was I was like, oh no, there's going to be an altercation over that squirrel. So I go running down there and I look out, and Alex, again, a different look in his eye, different from the crazed look when he got triggered. It was this calm, peaceful look. He looked at the dog, he looked at the squirrel, and he chose to go up the hill, and he sat down, and never again did he ever spark a fight. He consciously made that decision. I didn't train it out of him.
Wow.
This was not a dog training incident. that's animals have their own soul path. So that was part of his. I've had mothers come onto the property that part of their soul path has been to be mothers all the way through. What does that feel like? Because they've had their babies taken from them. And learning about friendship, learning about, trust, learning. I had a dog named Butch, and he had to learn about, he turned out to be the dog with the golden heart, who learned about heart opening. So we're all, and if it all parallels usually and mirrors what we're learning as
I
well.
was just gonna say, it sounds so much like human beings and our past.
Exactly.
It's like our
Exactly.
past, and it's like what we're learning and how we're healing and transforming also.
They're doing the same thing. And, just like children, they have, like, we could say, oh, here's my child, and my experience of them is, and this is who they are. And the child could say, well, my experience of mom was, and they have their own view. So do the animals. We have our experience of them, but they're having their experience of us. And they're growing personally and transforming in themselves. It's really beautiful when you start to really realize that, how interconnected our paths really are.
That's amazing. So, okay, so now with all these animals who you've loved, and then they go to pass, is this rainbow bridge real? What happens with them? Do they come back, Tammy? What is it just like human beings? When we come back into another lifetime, do they stay? I know that we all have oversouls, and a part of us can go into another animal, another human being. Do they wait for? I know that they reunite often with their hopefully kinder owners on the other side or whatever. How does all that work? Because people who lose their animals are so bereft, and I don't think many of them are that aware that it's not over for animals either, right?
Oh my goodness, no. And like, once connected, always connected. So first of all, you can't ever break that connection. So whether, they're passing or they're in life, that connection once established, you're in. You're in always. And so, the Rainbow Bridge, is fascinating because the animals have actually shown me time and time again that it's kind of like, uh, I don't know if you remember that game, Red Rover, send so and so right over. So if you have two lines of, animals, whatever, then they're like, Red Rover, send so and so right over. And that one comes in to the next chapter of life. The Rainbow Bridge is actually a two-way street. We see it in our mind's eye from what we've been taught is, oh, it is a portal. It's a higher frequency. It's a
It's not the same portal
vibrational.
that we humans go through. It's a different portal the animals go through.
That's not what I've been shown. I've been
It's
shown
the same portal.
we're all portaling everywhere, right?
Okay,
We're all taking the same shuttle.
okay. But why
But
do they call it a rainbow shuttle for the
I think there was a poem that started many, many years ago, and I'd have to locate it, but that depicted a rainbow bridge. And
Oh, so someone gave it that name.
yeah, and so fascinating thing is I live in Asheville, North Carolina, and so in Chimney Rock, which is probably 40 minutes from here, there is a state park, and there's an actual flowering bridge that you can go to, which of course I had to visit. There's this beautiful gardens that run by volunteers, and then there's a path, and it's a bridge over water painted with rainbow colors. And the most beautiful thing is that on each side where you would put your hands are the collars and the photos from thousands of animals, because this has now become a visitation spot. And what I've heard about it, and then I was here one day getting ready to go on a bike ride, and I heard, nope, you're going to the Rainbow Bridge. And I was like, okay. So I went. The energy on that bridge was palpable. It's such a beautiful, it in itself is a portal where so many animals are remembered, are loved. People will start tearing up before they get down to it, and you wait and take your turn to go look at things. But I was thinking about after I had visited, and I teared up. And I actually had Ernie, who passed in July and started the little like string of them. I had his collar and had forgotten I had his collar, and I was like, oh, I'll put his collar on the bridge. It's such a moving experience. I think it gives people like a physical place, right, to anchor in their head, but there's also an energetic, vibrational truth and component to it. And if you think about this, let's just say you've decided as a visitor to the Asheville area, you're going to go here, but you normally aren't going to like go somewhere you tear up. You're going to go to a tourist site. You're going to go see the Biltmore House or whatever. It gives people an opportunity to open their hearts. Even people that don't have animals start crying. So there's a real movement going on with the animals in the animal like network, of opening our hearts, not closing them. Don't close up shop. Keep opening and keep opening. So the bridge, I actually do a meditation in one of my shows to help people connect with their animals on the rainbow bridge, because they can go on the bridge too. They're not separate from us. We just
That's
haven't been taught what that really looks like, energetically speaking.
that's wonderful. And the other thing that's really important for people to know is that animals go through a portal, just like human beings do. And but they don't get a life review. We get a life review.
Oh, that's so interesting. Cannot believe you brought that up. So interesting, because one of my show topics is animals and the life review. You
Do
must
they
be
get a life review?
Um,
I'm now intuitive. I've been told I'm intuitive.
you know, they do reflect. They reflect just like we reflect. And that first 3 weeks, especially after they pass, I want to say, you know, it's one of the hardest times. You know, we're in the compost, for lack of a better word to say. We're going through it, but it's also the richest time where we have access to like things we wouldn't. The veil is so thin. The veil is so thin before life kicks in again, that they do a life review. And as you do too, because the minute they pass, loved one of human or animal, it throws us into that life review, because the actual event, the movie has come to an end, and so all we have is to look back and see. And so that piece is the energetic, like, I think, bridge that leads us into the healing part, even though it surely doesn't feel like healing. But the animals go to great lengths with their people to share. Don't you remember when? And, you know, how did I come to you again? You want to tell that story? And for people not to freeze them in those last moments, because that's not who they are, and that's not what they want us to focus on.
It's good for people to know that it's not over when it's over for
Oh, no,
animals either.
no.
And so that they also get a life review. And then are there healing places for animals? Like if animals have been mistreated or whatever, just like for humans, that there are healing places on the other side.
I've seen animals go on to work with children and work with people who have been abused. So that same healing work continues. And even, you know, people talk, you asked about, do they come back? How does that work? I have one on the property right now that's a cat that I would say Skittles he's not the reincarnation per se of Sneakers, but he's the soul blended reincarnation, if that makes sense. It's a soul blending that comes in. It's not because
Can you explain for people who are like soul blending?
Yeah, like, what are you talking about?
Two souls blend together.
So, you know, we're here to experience life, and we're here to grow, and we're here to be new. And so, you know, the animals, if we want to use those for an example, they don't just come in to do the same thing over again. Like, what fun would that be, right? We're here to learn and grow. And so aspects of those souls come into the new soul. I mean, Skittles was literally, Sneakers came to me after he passed, showed me this kitten at the gate. No, showed me a kitten. He went down the driveway, and I was like, "Oh, Sneakers, you're back. I'm so happy." And then he moved aside, and there was this little black and white kitten. And then I woke up, didn't think a thing about it. A week later, guess what shows up at the gate? The little black and white kitten, who now is named Skittles. And it took over where Sneakers left off of protecting the property, acts like Sneakers. You know, do you see? So it's a soul, but he's Skittles too. You know, he's like his own little dude.
Right.
But it's this, that's what I mean.
Sort of like he's a little bit of a team.
Yes.
He's sort of like a little bit of a team.
Yeah. And, you know, if we think about it, when we have grandchildren, we could say, "Oh, you're just like grandma," or "You're just like," do you see what I'm saying? Soul blending. Soul blending.
Yeah. That's so cool. And you also had a beautiful white lab named Murphy, who you describe as a healer. And Murphy awakened you to the fact that our connection, and like we're talking about right now, never dies. So could you share how you help pets who have crossed over to connect with their humans? That's an amazing thing. I think we need about 1 million more Tammys in the world, because I'm sure that many people would love to have more of this available to them. So
the beautiful answer to that is everybody can connect. Everybody can communicate. You're the one with the connection to begin with. You're the one, the heart. You have the heart connection. So that's the main thing to always remember. You're not disconnected. And it's a matter of tapping into your own space, because you have all the energy there that's connected to that animal. You can tell stories of when they came. what funny things they did. It's all there. It's in like the hologram of your experience with them. And so what I work with people on is the animals are very current. Just because they pass doesn't mean they're like done. They will help. They can help. People always want signs. And I'm like, well, you've got to, having that desperate need is what's blocking it, that grief that holds you down. And that's what Murphy, who was like the Dalai Lama of dogs. I mean, Murphy was perfect. And he was so kind and compassionate. And at the same time, he called me on my stuff. If I sounded like I was being like, hurry up, Millie, or whatever, if my voice, he would give me the look like, that is not acceptable. Yeah, he called me. So what he taught me through his passing, and I thought I wasn't going to make it. I remember turning to Katie saying, like, can you hang around? Like, just don't be going after him. I was grieving. I went into a plunge of grief, and a lot of this too was my old stuff from my childhood that I didn't realize was coming up, right? So grief is a collective, right? So it's not just about the one thing. It allows other emotions to come to the surface that are trying to release. So, several months into his passing, I was vacuuming and I had a closet that had, towels and stuff that messy. And I opened the closet to do some vacuuming, and a throw fell out, and I picked it up and I was putting it back, only it was a throw with Murphy's photo on it. He had some tulips, and I'm looking at it right now. He had picked tulips with me one day, and I caught him. It wasn't staged. And I just burst into tears, slid down sobbing, and, just the vacuums running, lost it. And it wasn't too long after that it was like March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. And for some unknown reason, I felt called to find a little picture of Puppy Murphy he loved to carry things with a clover in his mouth. And so I put it up, not even thinking about it all day long. I looked at that and I was like, God, he was such a cute puppy. He was so cute. And all those feelings of like, oh my gosh, Murphy. I probably looked at that photo 1,000 times that day. And then I went to sleep, and in the morning I had a dream. And in the dream, somebody led me to a door, opened it, and Murphy's there, and he's adult Murphy. He looks really good. He's jumping up and down like he used to when I would come home from traveling. I hug his neck, and I'm like, it's so good to see you, and I can feel his fur. And then we hang out together, and then I wake up. Only I know I've just visited with him. That was a true visitation. And as I processed that, what he told me was, in my looking at that puppy photo, I forgot I was grieving, and my vibration raised, and it allowed me to open to the vibration that he was at.
Oh, wow.
So it's that simple and that difficult when we're grieving, right? So we have to work at grieving. I had to keep remembering I missed him. I had to keep remembering everything, but I forgot it for one day. And that's what I've really learned, that the animals say, we try really hard to connect with you. We're like, the Elvis banner in the sky, like, here we are. But if we're blocking and looking with our hearts and looking for us, you've got to come through this way. Well, maybe they're going to show you through something else. It's that opening, that gradual opening. But everybody has the ability
Right.
to.
So that points to the fact that when we're grieving, our vibration is lower. That's why
Yes.
that stops
Yes.
us in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
To communicate. And that points to the fact that the more you can heal, it raises your vibration.
Yes.
Right?
And yes, at the same time, we want to I always respect, be where you are. If you feel terrible that day, just honor that space and don't beat yourself up over it. I had to go through my own many, many grieving processes and then revisit several, right? So it's not like once and done. But when you tend to finally come to a realization like, wait a minute, I am still connected, because I can go within and I can pull up all kinds of different memories that are very alive energetically. And when the animals have told me, when you think of me, I am there. I've been shown that time and time again, but you don't see me. Just like me,
It's like with human beings, just like with people.
When that throw fell out, I thought about it later. I was like, wow, Tammy, Murphy was giving you like the best sign ever, and you lost it. But I couldn't see the joy, like, oh my gosh, Murphy's like, oh my God, thank you, Murphy. I wasn't in that space yet.
Right. It was almost like if he was still on the planet, he would have jumped at you and hugged you the way that throw felt on you.
Yes. I hugged it and I slid down the wall and I sobbed a good sob, and then I felt terrible the rest of the day. But it was just like, I look back and I was like, oh, wow, I'm pretty sure you missed that signal. I think he was wanting you to be happy over that.
Another thing that I love that you do is you help clients connect with their pets and spirit, which gives birth to a new beginning in the client's relationship as it continues with the animal.
Yes.
And it's life changing and healing for the client. So can you talk about that? I mean, all the people on this planet who lose their animals or they die. And is there a difference? Is there any difference in if you have to put an animal to sleep than when they die naturally?
Difference in what way?
I mean, they cross over and all of that kind of thing, but do the animals just perceive it that you're doing a kindness for them and helping them to let go?
It's interesting you bring that up because from what I've been taught from several, and they were hard teachings, the animals actually have a choice in how they pass.
Oh,
Even if it's euthanasia, even if it's
you just froze on me, Tammy. Tammy, you're frozen.
natural passing. There you are.
Okay,
You froze too.
go.
We both froze. Oh, I lost my train. What were we
So
talking
we were
about?
talking about euthanasia and
Oh,
how the animals have, and that they actually have a choice.
on a soul level, they're choosing with us. So in other words, they're participants in every event, right? We have the characters in the play and on stage. And so let's say, like with Ollie, for instance, when I took him, I was one of the characters, Ollie was one of the characters, the vet was one of the characters. And so we all have our certain role and perspective we play. And a lot of times the animals are teaching up until the very last minute, teaching even the vets, having the vets, helping the vets open their hearts to see something that touches them in a way that wouldn't have otherwise. They are all, up until the time they pass, always offering gifts. And what I've always told all of my animals, and I help people with this piece, is be with wherever they are and ask the animal what it is they want. Like, please guide me. Please show me. I'm here to do my part and help you. This is your body. I had a dog that passed in a way that I didn't really agree with. Apparently, I have a pattern of that. I'm not agreeing with it. And I said, well, had you gone this way when I finally could talk to her, I would have been okay with that. I'm not okay with how you chose. And what she told me, and this is what taught me this, is I went out as a warrior like I chose.
Wow.
And I'm like, what did you say? Did you just say you chose? Like you chose? So, the animal that runs out in front of the car, the animal that it's mind boggling to understand they do have, that's part of their soul path, part of their soul. It was part of her soul contract with another animal that didn't have anything to do with me, but I would have stopped it. I would have gotten in the middle of it. And that's, I would have interfered with that soul contract and soul path. So, you know, how we respond to how they pass, that's a very individual and personal thing because, for some, euthanasia is easier to handle. Natural death, maybe they would prefer. What if it's sudden? Are there varying degrees of grief and things like that? It's all very, very individual, and it's hard to compare them. But they all are popped out of their bodies so soon, sometimes even before they receive, if there's euthanasia. Yeah.
They're gone already. Well, they say that also. I hear a lot with human beings too. That a lot of times when they are caught in very tragic circumstances,
Yes.
where we're so upset about the way they died,
Yes.
they really left their body. They were gone. Their body just went through that event, but their soul was already on the other side.
Yes, and they've always told me no matter the ways that we go or the tragedies that we go through, there are always gifts in every circumstance. And I've learned over the years to start looking for the gifts as soon as I can, because I'm like, I know they're there. I'm gonna look under this rock. I don't see it. Knowing that I still have to go through my process, and it's not like you want to wash that away. But the profound teachings that I've watched the animals share with their humans in our sessions are just amazing. And it's like the people leave the sessions and leave the time with their animal knowing that they are not disconnected from them at all. What were they thinking? It's just like, oh, I thought you were gone, but I see so much you're not. And then the dreams start, or they help lead another animal to them to open their hearts. They're very current. They don't want to be cut out of our lives. That's
so
rude.
Cool. Well, this is like a really enlightening conversation, because a lot of people feel for an animal when it's over, but they actually have a trajectory that's very similar to ours.
Yes, their soul path continues, and a lot of times they are put in place to help us with the next phase that we're in.
Wow.
Many times.
That is really cool.
It's like they're the little spiritual board.
Wow. So that leads you to tell us about your ebook. It's titled Soulful Journeys: Finding Healing and Connection through animals, and you've got stories and reflections on the bonds we share with our pets, and the life lessons they can offer us, which we've been talking about. So I would love you to tell us about your ebook and share. And you were talking about your rescue dog, Remy, and that the lesson he offered you. And what else would you like? Just tell our audience about your ebook, because I think a lot of people in our audience would love to get that.
Oh, well, I would love to share that with them. The compilation of stories in there, the animals actually arranged it. I had nothing to do with it.
But they channeled
arranged
it to you. They channeled what they wanted.
They channeled that. I mean, I'm but the messenger. They channeled it, and they're very much teaching stories. They're heart-opening stories. The animals have definitely taken a role in teaching these like bigger perspectives, things that we wouldn't normally look at. And so for little Remy, he was a little min pin that I was actually minding my own business on the road, and I can feel energy. So I felt some energy to my left, and I turn and look, and I see this tiny dog darting in and out of a gas station. And so I'm like to my husband, he goes, "All right, you want me to turn around?" Like, would you please? And so I spent the next 2 hours trying to get him because he was so frantic, and it was getting late. It was, again, there's some about Thanksgiving and openings with holidays. I'm just saying.
But I got to tell you something as you're talking, there's something about your husband too, because not a lot of men would be like, okay, honey, here we go. Really. And it's before Thanksgiving or whatever's going on. I mean, he's a good guy. You got
Absolutely. And, he knew the writing on the wall. He said, "That bothers you." I'm like, mm-hmm. I almost afraid to ask. So, I spent 2 hours trying to get him to eat jerky treats, and it was starting to get dark, and these boys came up on a bike, and they apparently had been there for a few weeks. This little tiny dog, and one eye was bad, and he had a ratty collar, and so they're like, "There's that stupid dog, hit him." And I must have looked like, "You want a piece of me?" Because they left after that. I probably had crazy eye, I'm sure. But anyway, raining, getting dark, I'm getting really discouraged and worried and I know he needs help. I can feel. So it dawned on me. I started out loud saying, "Please, God, help me." Saint Francis, I was starting to name any saint I could think of and making some up, only it was super loud and super like, "I need help now. We need to help him." Within a second of uttering that, little Remy leans, he's like, "Oh, that's all you want?" He leans his head, allows me to catch his collar, and I grab him. It was that simple.
Oh my
And
God.
I'm like, I could have done this 2 hours ago, like asking for help, right? So it was
Wow.
it was that true surrender and calling in the big guns, basically, right? And I didn't realize, how often we don't ask for help when we need it. But he literally was like, "Oh, oh." And it was so easy from then on. And his whole life was amazing with me, and his passing, which I haven't written about, totally a miraculous visitation after he passed. So
Wow.
anybody who thinks that they are not very current and able to communicate with you, they absolutely can. And I always, suggest to people, easiest way to communicate. They're like, "How can I do it?" I said, "I'll tell you how. Do you have a heart?" And they're like, "Huh." I'm like, "It's all you got. You've connected to them already. So write little Remy a letter. Dear Remy, I love you and I want you to know, and have plenty of Kleenex, and just write. Get in a good spot, just write. Write everything you want to share, all the gifts, I loved you so much for doing, like, whatever comes." And you can probably cry, and it's going to stir up a lot of emotions. Just when you're done, the energy will drop and you'll feel complete. Then the second part of this, which is really amazing, because you're going to have things come in, memories on that first one. On the second one, when you're ready, let Remy write a letter to you. "Dear Mom, I love you and I want you to know." And then start writing. And what happens is you connect through your heart, because the mind is given a job. "Oh, I know how to do a letter," right? As kids, we were taught. So the mind gets out of the way, and the heart connects through the hand down, on the paper, and you start communicating, and you get amazing information.
Is that what you would call automatic writing? That people?
No, I guess, I don't know. I did it. I stumbled on this myself when one of mine had passed. And again, I must not have agreed with how he went either. But I started writing to him, and then all of a sudden he started
Yeah,
writing back.
because people say that when you have deceased loved ones and all that, you can communicate with
Absolutely.
them through automatic writing.
Absolutely.
It's probably the same way. And why don't people understand when people are grieving over the loss of a pet? Why is that such a problem for what would you like to explain to people about the difficulty many people have about understanding feelings of grief over the loss of a pet? Is that because they don't really perceive the pet as having a soul and being a being?
Possibly that. And it's also because maybe there's a hierarchy in their mind of what's the importance of beings, like not all beings, whether it's an ant or a bird or a dog or a horse or whatever, all souls matter in my world, but not all souls matter in the worlds of everybody. And so I think that lack of empathy speaks very directly to where they are in their own development. And I also think people objectify animals. They're objects. Oh, just get another one. Objects, right? And think about it. We objectify so much in life in general. It's out there rather than part of us as well. So I think that too is kind of like a spiritual learning curve for people. And I think for those of us who do grieve and own that grief and don't have a place to put it, we end up being teachers for those who get all like it's just an animal. What's wrong with them? Showing them by example, that's all. You don't have to take that away from them. You don't have to agree or disagree. They know who they are with their animal. They know. And there's an awareness they have that the one who's judging doesn't.
Wow, that's so fascinating. Tell us about your intuitive process called SoulSpeak and how you help people through like transitions, personal crises, and the grieving process. And then you've got 2 monthly SoulSpeak events that people can sign up for. You want to tell us all about that?
Sure, sure. So, SoulSpeak originated over my lifetime. It's an intuitive, organic process. It's very conversational. It's all about connecting with the heart. It's all about starting wherever we are in the story. However, I always tell people start wherever you want to start, middle, the beginning, it really doesn't matter. What is your heart guiding you to talk about? Because what happens is the animals can come in, and the animals are actually nudging them to start wherever they're starting. They just think they're doing it on their own. But, it's a matter of connecting with that space that is so wounded and so hurting and stuck that in the talking and the sharing of the story, it helps alleviate it and it helps give air, is like breathing. And if the animals do the same, we allow them to tell their stories, and then the story can transform. It's like alchemy. The story, once it's spoken, can transform and keep energetically changing. And so with the organic process I go through, it's very much, I never know what the animal's going to want to talk about, where we're going to go. It's like walking down a winding path, and we're going to stop and look at the flowers. We're going to stop and look at this, and we're both going to discover. So it's a process of discovery and self-discovery, heart discovery, it's a connecting in the heart. So it's very conversational. It's not necessarily spitting out. It's not information. It's not information. It's a discovery of what's already healing in your heart and coming out to be seen. So it is very life-changing for people, very transformative. They always feel more grounded in themselves, more connected to their loved one in spirit, realizing that.
This is for both humans and animals. So like when you do these SoulSpeak events, they can be looking to communicate with their deceased loved one on the other side or their animal. You're one size fits all. You can do it.
It's all the same. I always say, it's never ever just about the animal. The animal just drops them off. It's always about the people. It's always about our hearts, and on the show, which it's funny, I call it a show. It's more like a class and a workshop. And it's such a joy to do because the animals channel it. They tell me what the next topic's going to be. I sit down and we work on it together, and then a show comes through, and it's free to everybody. It's bi-weekly. So I believe my next one's coming up soon. And all the topics tend to be different depending on what the animals want to talk about. Last time they wanted to talk about heart shapes. This time they wanted to talk about animals as empaths. The animals are empaths just like we are. So I was like, oh, well, this is interesting. Let's see what you have to say about this. And so we learn a lot on the show. And so no matter where you are, whether you're in your process, if you're grieving or if you're not grieving, if you currently have an animal or if you've experienced anything, there's always many, many gifts that are shared from the animals. And people always walk away with, I think, with like a gift bags, at a party. I always used to send little gift bags home. I always try to like add exercises or self-reflection questions and, in the ebook that I did, end of each one, I always, channeled with the animals to what's the reflection of this? You think about within your own life, because, that's where we learn the most, when we're kind of doing our own journaling inside ourselves, helped by the animal.
That's fabulous. And you have healing Zoom sessions with pets also, right?
Yes.
So you have private sessions that I know you have private sessions that address healing from grief, life in transition, and mediumship. And you have healing Zoom sessions with pets. What would you like to tell us about all of the above?
Again, no matter where you are in your transitional life process, it can help you sort things out and help you get clarity and peace.
And someone can sign on and say, Tammy, I lost my dog and I'd like to have a Zoom session to connect with my dog. You can do that.
Absolutely.
I lost my dad. I need a Zoom to connect with my dad. You can do that.
Yes, because it's all underneath the grief and the clarity. When people say, "Can you just give me a message about my dog?" And I was like, "So let's back this trolley up. What is it your heart really wants to know?" Because that's the bigger question, right? So connecting with dad is really like, what is it your heart really needing? And usually it's about, well, I was worried because at the very end I wasn't there. Right? It's always about what's underneath and the deeper question. So I encourage people to, to go a little under the surface, because otherwise, we don't get the benefit of the healing that is actually being offered by the animals and spirit.
That's beautiful. That's really wonderful to know about, Tammy. And you've got some offers for our Grief and Rebirth podcast audience.
Yes.
When they visit your website. Tell us about them.
Yeah, visit my website at tammyhendrix.com. But I have an ebook that I released that we've spoken about, and very personal stories about my animals. These are real life stories. I felt vulnerable originally writing them, and then I was so glad to share what the animals shared. And years and years ago, thinking, oh, what's wrong with me? I've got all these animals, not realizing that this would be used for helping and teaching. And so you can go on my website, sign up for the newsletter, and I will send you a free copy of that ebook. It's like 15 stories. They're short stories, so you can pick it up, put it down, not have to stay with it. And just really, I hope each story touches something within you that helps you.
That's wonderful. I'm sure a lot of people are going to do that now. And in what ways, Tammy, does connecting with animals become a powerful way to cultivate joy and a sense of connection with the world around us?
Animals are so naturally connected to the natural world. Oh, it's a fast in. And so just breathing in the space of where they live brings immediate joy. Always. And people have told me this. It does it for me. I'm a cyclist, so I'll go out and ride here in Asheville where bears are all over the neighborhood. And it's the funniest thing. They live within the neighborhoods. They have dens around, and I'll round a corner and they'll look at me and they'll say, "Oh, it's you again." And I'll say, "Oh, it's you again. And I need to get by." And then they proceed to not do anything and block the way.
Wow.
But it connects. It's such a joy. It brings such joy. My heart smiles. So, I think the main thing that brings me joy, and I think this is to feel connected to ourselves, to our hearts, to others, right? Whether they're human or animal, whether it's the cashier at the grocery store, or the Amazon driver, or the person in the elevator that I bumped into and we both screamed. It was like a laugh. Hearts are meant to love and smile. That's what they're meant.
Mine is now interviewing you. You're just absolutely lovely, Tammy. And
Thank you.
You brought us such wonderful information. And I really love that through SoulSpeak, you both teach and role model that whether a being is a pig, a dog, a human being, or has wings, a soul is a soul, no matter what. Therefore, we all want to be seen and heard. We all have value.
Yes.
And we all matter. And the remarkable way you connect with animals breaks down communication barriers, provides clarity into and underneath any issue at hand, and brings us a profound feeling of connection, which leads straight to our souls, which is our true essence.
Yes.
Tammy, thank you so much for the incredibly healing, eye-opening work you do as a facilitator for personal and spiritual growth, both for ourselves and through our relationships with animals. And I truly thank you from my heart for this open-hearted, fascinating, and very illuminating interview. I just know
Oh,
so many people are going to enjoy it. Thank you
it's
so
been
much.
an honor. It's been an honor. Overlit with the animals. Overlit with the animals. The animals guided us.
It's beautiful, just wonderful. And here's a loving reminder, everyone, that you can see the show notes and all Grief and Rebirth podcast episodes on ireneweinberg.com. And make sure to follow us and like us on social at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. As I like to say, to be continued. Thank you so much, Tammy.
Oh,
Many
thank you.
blessings.
Thank
And bye
you.
for now, everyone.